Welcome to episode 6 of the Minds Capital podcast, the show devoted to the growing world of independent sponsorship and deal-by-deal private equity. I'm Will Smith, here with my partners in Minds Capital, Max Lummis and Nicholas James. Today's interview is with Nikolay Dimitrov. Before we get to the interview with Nikolay, guys, let's call out a few things that the audience should listen for. Max, what struck you from our conversation here with Nikolay?
Well, it was a unique discussion for sure because Nikolay is Bulgarian and he's doing independent sponsor deals in Bulgaria. He's a former professional footballer, so it was a cool episode, just hearing about that and hearing about his background and how he transitioned from playing professional soccer into being an independent sponsor. It's impressive. But he's doing deals in Bulgaria, and I love the valuations that he's buying these for. He's buying them anywhere from 2 to 4x EBITDA. It's a burgeoning market. There's less competition there. He might be one of the first independent sponsors on the ground. And so he's getting really good deals, but he's getting fair deals because there's not a lot of competition. So super interesting. The deals are priced lower because there's less competition. It's not the US. There's, kind of less track record there with this type of private investment and potentially less ability to exit the deal as easily over there. So, there's other risks that go along with it if you're thinking about this from the standpoint of a US investor, but exciting and very applicable to anyone sort of looking at deals around the world. And I think we're going to see a lot more independent sponsors in emerging markets in the coming years.
Yeah. Well, we have another interview queued with a couple of sponsors also in emerging markets. And I've done a handful of interviews in Acquiring Minds with searchers or sort of independent sponsors, consolidators in other markets. And so I would actually encourage the audience listening to this, that this isn't a case study on kind of Bulgaria being a Bulgarian independent sponsor, but really an independent sponsor in any emerging market or market where private equity and independent sponsorship is less mature, because there are just very clear patterns here, and we get into them in some depth in the interview. But I can just imagine guys that I interviewed in Chile, for example, who are rolling up veterinary clinics in Chile, kind of nodding along as they listen to someone's experience on the other side of the world. Nicholas, what did you think of the interview?
No, I think that's the crux of this episode is how is it to be an independent sponsor outside of the US, which is a pretty mature market. And I think we talk about the obstacles and quirks and challenges of being an independent sponsor abroad. But I also think we cover, with a lot of good content in here, the opportunities, of course, of being a first mover and paving the way and getting a lot of warm inbounds because you're the only one really doing this. You get a lot of visibility because you're differentiated. And so that's really cool to hear about. Low valuations come with that. So you can generate very good returns. And it's exciting to hear how Nikolay is approaching this. More broadly, or you asked specifically about this episode, I loved hearing his anecdotes about playing in the Champions League and facing Ronaldinho when he was playing against FC Barcelona. I mean, what a dream. But one story that really resonated with me was when he was meeting with a business owner that he's trying to buy this veterinary clinic. And so he's sitting in the clinic, talking to the business owner who's a veterinarian, and the guy is smoking inside of his own clinic. And when Nikolay asks, "Can I see your financials?" This Bulgarian veterinarian says, yes, I have nothing to hide. And he pulls out a cigarette pack, Marlboro specifically, and all my invoices are inside the cigarette pack. I have nothing to hide. And he just hands it over. And it's just really funny. I've been a sponsor for many years myself. I've met some eccentric business owners. One story that comes to mind for me is I was going out to dinner with a business owner many years ago. And as we were kind of valeting the car, he's like, "Oh, shoot. and he already had 2 guns on him. So he said like hidden under his shirt, there's like, Nicholas, I actually have 1 more gun here in the, the drawer right in front of the passenger seat. Would you mind having that in your pocket? So he's like, 'cause he couldn't relay the car with the gun, right? So I had to grab the gun, even though I don't have a permit or anything, and hide it under my shirt as I went into dinner trying to persuade him. And
sounds like a Texas deal.
Yeah, exactly.
So no, I really loved it. I think the chemistry with Nikolay was really great, and can't wait to see where he's going with his business and to keep in touch with him going forward.
Well, I think we all agree that being a first mover as an independent sponsor in a less mature market comes with both pros and cons. If you can make it happen, the pros probably far outweigh the cons. That point about deal flow, Nicholas, I mean, one of the dynamics that he saw was very difficult. You kind of had to educate the market, educate the sellers. So initially, there's probably a lot more friction because there's a lot less familiarity with somebody with sellers having somebody knock on their door, say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about buying your business. So more education investment up front. But once you turn the corner on that, then the deal flow really comes, and you get a lot more deal flow than the counterpart of Nikolay would in say the U.S. market. So now he's got more deals than he knows what to do with. The other thing I wanted to call out was just how he got a little burned, which we talked about in the early part of the episode of in his outreach, in the methods that he used, the aggressiveness, his own word, that he used in his initial outreach. Which he was basically following the playbook that he'd heard about from probably in the US. So the lesson there would be the dangers of just copying and pasting what you learn are the tactics that work from the US or another more mature market into your local market. You need to make sure you're customizing what you learn abroad to the your own cultural context where sellers might never have even. It may never have occurred to them that they could even sell their business. So, great, guys. Well, let's get to the interview with Nikolay Dimitrov, episode 6 of the Minds Capital podcast. Enjoy. Welcome to Meeting of the Minds, your connection to the growing world of independent sponsors and deal-by-deal private equity. We are your hosts, Will Smith and Nicholas James.
Nikolay Dimitrov founded Unity, an independent sponsor based in Bulgaria. Nikolay used to be a professional soccer player, and he has 11 games for Bulgaria's national team. Soccer is a big deal in Bulgaria. I remember watching them play the semifinals in the World Cup. So Nikolay is well known in Bulgaria. You might even say a celebrity. And we'll talk about how this has helped and hurt him as an independent sponsor. Today, Unity owns 3 platforms and has completed several add-on acquisitions. Nikolay, welcome to Meeting of the Minds.
Happy to be here, guys. Hello.
So it's not every day we have a former international soccer player on here. I have to ask, who were some of the famous players that you played with or perhaps against during your career?
Oh, it's a really an easy answer for me because I was part of that generation in Bulgaria where we were the first Bulgarian team who were in to play in the UEFA Champions League. So we were in a group. In the group stage, we were with FC Chelsea from London, FC Barcelona, and FC Werder Bremen. They were the champions of Germany. So it was full of famous and star players there. But I had one special there. It was Ronaldinho. Basically, all my walls in my rented apartment they were full with Ronaldinho's pictures and posters, and I was a huge fan of him. And when I saw him live, I was just in awe for 180 minutes. I was just watching him.
Oh, that's amazing. I remember watching him live as well in Barcelona. I think it was 2007. And for me, he was one of the best players ever, for sure. He was an artist on the field. Did you rush to get this? How was it after the game? Did everyone on your team just rush to swap your jersey with him?
Yes. But I was just in emotional shock, so I didn't care about his jersey. Just wanted to watch him.
And how does it feel to represent your country on that kind of stage?
To be honest, it's one of the best things that can happen with a professional athlete. It doesn't matter at what sport, but on a club level, you're building yourself as a professional on a club level. But basically, when you go to play for your country and represent it, it doesn't matter in which tournament. You feel really proud, and when you hear the anthem, even more.
And so, in our pre-call, you actually said something really interesting, where most boys and males out there dream about becoming a Champions League player at the international level, like you playing Ronaldinho. You actually got to a point in your career where you were ready for new challenges. I think you even said you were bored. How did that came about?
Well, as I mentioned to you before, Nicholas, I'm from that generation that in soccer or in football, it was really important what you can do on the pitch, and it was really important your talent. And the more I grew up in football, and the more at the end of my career, the football, and still is, much more commercially oriented, which I have nothing against. But I've seen many times where really good players are not transferred because someone cannot make enough money from them. And that started to bother me, to be honest. And I really love the game with all my heart. But when I felt that passion started to be lower, as from the beginning, I started to look for other options.
And so how does that process go? And specifically, how did you become an independent sponsor? It's not a natural transition, is it?
I would say it's not a natural transition. But actually, for me, the first book for entrepreneurship, if I can say it, which I read was Richard Branson's book, his biography, Finding My Virginity or something like that. And I really loved how he approached business. I really loved the easiness that he went from challenge to challenge. And then I said that's a possible path for me after my career. But then I started to get connected with other people from business, and most of them were an acquisition entrepreneurs. And I really saw that this is going to be my thing. And the more I talked with them, the more I was less involved in soccer, in my mind, and the more I was involved in business, and I started to make connections and started already to make my plans until I quit.
Were these Bulgarians, Nikolay, that you were networking with, or people from elsewhere?
From elsewhere. To be honest, in Bulgaria, that's not something really popular. Obviously, there is an M&A activity, but it's on a much higher level, from size point of view, because we do have private equity funds here. And most of my partners and the people that I've talked to, they are from abroad.
And the idea of buying businesses and acquiring businesses as opposed to starting something in Bulgaria from scratch was what drew you?
If I have to be honest, during my career, in my last contract, I played in Russia. There was my last contract. And I started a cleaning company, small cleaning company, which sort of I bought from the seller, but it was not there wasn't any cash consideration. So he just sort of worked with me in the company, and then he gave me the shares because he didn't want to do it anymore. So, but at that time I was in Russia and the company was here. So I could say that for me it looked really more difficult to build a company organically. And when I saw that with acquisitions and with external growth, actually you can grow much faster and create much more value for you and for your investors. That's what also got me hooked.
There's quite a learning curve to buying businesses, obviously, Nikolay. And so a lot of people that we speak with, a lot of people on Acquiring Minds, the other podcast, come from business backgrounds or private equity or finance backgrounds where they have really direct applicable experience. So the pivot for you career-wise was going to be much more dramatic. What did you do to learn?
Well, obviously I tried to educate myself, and I'm still doing that. I made a couple of courses in Wharton Private Equity is the most famous one, but I have a certificate from there, and also all the people that I'm communicating with, I'm trying to get feedback from their acquisition entrepreneurs. So, but the most important thing, if I can say, for me, that was that when I was quitting my career in sports, the most important thing I learned there is that I need to have a good team. I need to have people that are much more experienced than me, that will have my back. And because it doesn't matter what I learn and what I learn on the courses and how many books I read, the most experience you get from doing something. And I knew that if I want to avoid the big mistakes, I need to have experienced people with me. So that's what I try to do first before buying any businesses.
So let's hear about the team that you put together, and how did you order things? Did you build the team first and went looking for acquisitions? Give us some visibility into that.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, the similarity between sport and what I'm actually doing now is one of the key things is actually the team. So the first thing I knew that I have to find people more experienced than me, and LinkedIn is a fantastic tool for that, especially for a guy like me with no experience. And also that gave me access to people not only from Bulgaria, but access to people from abroad. And I also saw that people from Bulgaria are not very keen to help someone like me. So people from abroad were much more willing to talk to me and willing to help someone like me who is just starting and maybe build something together.
What do you mean, Nikolay, that your countrymen were less eager to help? Why do you say more?
Well, maybe I haven't found the right people, but because in Bulgaria, as Nicola said, I'm not a celebrity. I don't feel myself like that, but I played in one of the most famous team, maybe the most famous team in Bulgaria. My career in Bulgaria was the team is called Levski Sofia, and the people here have how to say, they perceive football players in a way that is not. They don't think of them as very smart or very intelligent. I will say it like that. And maybe they had something in mind when I get in contact with them, and they didn't get it too serious. And I had no problem with that. I totally understand it, but I found out that people from abroad actually they were responding much better to my approach.
So your name recognition actually was a disadvantage in Bulgaria.
Yeah, especially talking to bankers as well, because as I said again, because of that stigma that the football players have here, they weren't taking me too serious. Sometimes I had to took my CFO with me, so they know that we really are serious about any particular deal. But even in the beginning, when I was interviewing the banks to see are they willing to lend on particular terms or to finance a smaller acquisition, I was doing it alone, and I could see that they were just they just wanted the meeting to finish because they didn't take me so serious. So that was also a learning curve for me, and I knew that I had to take someone from my team all the time until I do my first deal. Obviously, once you have one deal under your belt, everything changes.
So what time frame is this? It's around COVID time, right?
Yes. Just on COVID time, I decided to. I had 2 years more contract in Russia, and I just called my president and say, "Look, I'm quitting. I have another venture that I'm in love with, so I'm not going to come back." And he actually said to me, "I have a lot of players that said to me like this, but remember, you will want to come back here. So my door is open for you." But already 5 years or 4 years, I haven't talked to him.
Well, Nikolay, I think there's definitely a learning there for people who nobody will have been a professional football player and be dealing with that stigma and those stereotypes. But for people who want to do this for the first time, they may not engender the respect that they need to when they're first starting out. So I guess the takeaway would be bring your muscle. Bring the CFO along with you to the meetings. That was kind of the way that you assuaged people's concerns initially before you got your first deal done.
Exactly. Take someone with you who have some business experience or somebody that has a good CV that's done something in business.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm coming from it from the other angle where personal branding is so important, or branding in general is so important to stand out, especially in competitive fields like buying businesses and finance. And so here you're entering a new field with a name recognition that is very strong. And while that is associated to another skill set or other venture, other career, if you want, it at least gives you a starting point, and you were able to maybe get your foot in the door, and you brought a team member to bolster up the story. How has, now that you've been at it for 4 or 5 years, how has the personal branding, helped you perhaps? Because you obviously have a lot of it, even though you didn't deliberately build it for private equity purposes.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that it only worked on the minus side. Obviously, it helped me because, as I mentioned, the team I played here has a lot of fans, and I got meetings with people, and we talked a lot about the past in about football. So, sometimes with sellers as well. So I have 2 or 3 sellers that they knew someone I played with. So they call him and they give good feedback about me. So it was like an introduction. So in that sense, it helped me. But again, when you talk to a banker and you start to speak 30 minutes about football and who scored when, and I totally forget why I'm there, and all my business was already out of my head. So it has pluses and minuses. I'm not going to say it was only on the minus side, but I don't know, my expectations were different. I expected that if I go there, I'm dressed well, and I have a good idea, or I have a good business plan, I have a good team behind me, people will listen to me. But I just miss that how the people perceive me is also important.
So Nikolay, can we hear what did your team look like when you started out, the initial team you put together?
Well, our chairman was from I found the chairman, a CFO, a legal director, and 3 industry experts. And as I mentioned, you guys, our first acquisition vehicle that we wanted to build, it was a veterinary Rollup, and we can talk more about that. But I really felt that we had a great team with great experience, done a lot of acquisitions in that space, not in our area, but in their area. And part of that team also, they were veterinary doctors who sold their clinics to bigger groups, and then they manage veterinary practices for that group. So we had a really, really, really great experience. But as I mentioned that doesn't guarantee success.
And before we pivot to hearing about this story, Nikolay, those folks were all full-time people, or you had them on kind of contracts and worked for you essentially part-time or as needed?
No, to be honest, every one of them was promised equity, because I mean, in business you can contribute in 2 ways, either with sweat or with capital. So I didn't want their capital, because that is maybe the standard thing when you're connecting with someone about a business. I mean, you either want to raise a finance or want him to support you in any other way. So I said, I don't need your capital, I just want your time commitment. And when we make our first acquisition, when we incorporate, everyone will receive as much equity.
So you started out in 2020. The first thesis that you pursued was in the veterinary space. The veterinary space has seen quite a bit of success within private equity, both in Western Europe and even more so in America. So you probably had heard about that and decided to pursue it. How did you go about it, and what happened with that platform?
Well, yeah. So first of all, I also, when I started to do the research, talking to my partners, they told me we need to find a sector that is very fragmented, which in our area where we live in Central and Eastern Europe is not very difficult, because all of the sectors here are fragmented, and there is a potential for roll-up here in most of the sectors. So they told me we have to find a fragmented sector with good margins, and it was during COVID, so we have to find something that is not very affected from COVID. So obviously, healthcare is a good area to be in. It doesn't matter during COVID or not. So I started to connect with veterinary doctors from Bulgaria. Again, it was by LinkedIn. And after I speak with 3 or 4 people, just random people, I never met them. All of them were very skeptical, by the way, about what we were trying to do. But I took the information that we needed, that there is a room for consolidation. A lot of them are struggling with the administrative work, with the accounting, HR, etc. So we could have added a lot of value to that sector, not just to buy and stay on the asset. So that's how it started. We identified here 150 potential targets in Bulgaria and Romania. I have to say the project was for the 2 countries. So we were looking for veterinary clinics with at least 3 veterinary doctors there, so they can be structured more as a business. And it was 150 potential targets. So the most difficult thing, if I can say, was how we could have approached these people, because most of the time they are in the surgery room, the owners. So I tried emails, I tried calls, I tried cold calls, I tried referrals, and nothing worked. But when we tried with physical letters in a black envelope with red stamp, I think that made some impression on the people. So everybody received the envelopes and everybody opened it. I mean, that's the feedback I got from the courier firm that we hired. And that's how everything started.
Okay, so you had identified 150 potential targets for this roll-up, and then the outreach starts, and you had limited success with digital methods. These are people who've never been approached by buyers before, I imagine, right? In Bulgaria?
Exactly.
And so what was the reaction when they opened this black letter with a red stamp?
Well, I can imagine that most of them got offended by the feedback I got, and we can talk about that more. But in Bulgaria, I had 1 or 2 positive responses. People who said, "Yeah, let's come, let's talk about it." And in Romania, the response was much more positive, if I can say. So in general, we made 1 due diligence on 1 clinic in Bulgaria, and the deal fall apart because of the financials. They were not in good shape, as you can imagine. And also the other 2 deals in Romania that we did due diligence, it was the same story. We did due diligence, and then we saw that the financial they were not as they were presented. So we decided to pass. Although I was so motivated and so ready to do a deal, but I'm so grateful to my team because when I finished my career and I was already one year and a half in that project and no deal closed still, I was ready to close whatever deal they put in front of me, But that's what the team is for, and they say we're gonna have much more problems if we close it in that way.
Nikolay, your criteria had been 3 doctors or more. That's the metric you use to set the size of business, 3 doctors and above. So when this diligence was coming back at veterinarians of that size, was it that actually you needed businesses with more than 3 doctors, or just these particular businesses happened to be in bad shape?
Well, it was the second. So when we did the market research, we saw that veterinary clinics that have at least 3 doctors in place, they have at least 500,000 euro of revenue. So that was the minimum criteria that we wanted to see. But when I said in bad shape, I meant, and just to give you an example, we went to meet with one clinic in Romania, and when we said to the owner that we're gonna need set of financials, very standard, he said, "Oh yeah, I can show it to you." So he go into his where he works, he take a old package of cigarette, and the cigarette I think was Marlboro. He take that package, it was full with invoices. And he said, "Here are my financials. So I don't have anything to hide from you guys. Just take it." So I think that explains everything what we have to go through.
Yeah.
It's also great with a veterinarian who's smoking right there in the clinic.
Yes, and he puts his invoices in the old packages.
You said one thing earlier there that so you had 150 targets across 2 countries, and you reached out. It sounds like you had maybe a 1 or 2% hit rate in terms of getting into diligence, which, based on my experience, isn't that bad actually. I would say the target list was just small, right? When I've been doing proprietary outreach in my career, I've had target lists of thousands, if not even tens of thousands. And that's when you get sufficient volume where you can pretty aggressively go and do email campaigns and so forth. With 150 targets, it's almost more like a business development approach, right? These are 150 people. A lot of them know each other. I want to build relationships with them. In any given moment, only a small portion of them will be ready. But you went to say on something there. You said, I perhaps offended some of them. What did you mean by that? Wouldn't they be complimented by you approaching them about wanting to buy their business?
Well, I would love someone from them to talk and think like you, Nicholas, but that was totally the case. So, especially in Bulgaria, when I started to make my outreach, and all of my partners, they said, look, you send an email or you send a letter, then you follow up after 2 days with a call, and then you follow up with an email. And I thought nothing about it. So I said, I will do what they say. So I started to do that, but obviously that hit the doctors in the wrong way. So they got offended. And as I mentioned you, they also in a Facebook group that is only for veterinarians. And I have some screenshots from there. They actually said that there is one crazy ex-football player that wants to buy us. Let's not answer the phone to him anymore. So at one moment, just everything stopped. I had no answer. Nobody picked up the phone. Nothing. Everything was frozen. And even the deal that we were in negotiation in the due diligence process, because there was some seller financing component, the lady called me and said, "Look, if you either pay me all full price up front, or I'm out." And later I understood that was the reason, because of the venomosity that people had against us. She wanted to cash out immediately because she knew that she will have problems with her colleagues afterwards.
But so what's going on here? Because business owners getting offended because you're sending a letter and a couple of emails. Was it personal that you actually went a little bit farther than that and there's something you're not telling us here? Or is there something cultural going on? Because in the US, getting outreach is a daily thing for any business owner. Yep.
Especially for what we do. We're looking for proprietary deals. This is very essential to have a cold outreach. But I think it's cultural, Nicholas, because the people that we are buying the businesses from, they are first generation entrepreneurs here in Bulgaria. You have to know that until 1989, there was no private businesses here. So I understood why people think like that, and they had to go through a lot in that period from the 90s until now, and they had to survive. So they're really strong people, and I admire them. But the world already changed, and but if I have to look at it from my point of view, my mistake was that I had to custom my approach for our region. So I had to find a way to do it the US way, but customized as for the Central and Eastern Europe. And that's what we are doing now. I'm also having a lot of outreach now, but I'm just doing it in the way that people don't get offended so much here.
And so what was that modification?
Well, I find out that the moment because we do have deals, that helps a lot. We do have already closed deals.
Yeah.
So the moment we close the deal, immediately we say to the seller, open your textbook and show me other sellers, other people that would like to sell. So the people are much more responsive that way. Because you have to keep in mind also independent sponsor model. The model of independent sponsor is really new here. And 100% of the people that I got in contact with until now said you're the first one who is actually offering us something like this, and we didn't even know that such an opportunity exists. So it's really it's more of a cultural thing here.
So Nikolay, the owners that you have acquired, whose businesses you've acquired, you say to them, who are other good candidates for us to speak with? Do you then ask them to make the introduction?
Exactly.
Okay,
yes.
So you're actually it's a warm introduction. Of course,
yes.
makes all the difference.
Yes.
Yeah.
But going back to this Facebook group, I've never heard about anything like it. So they're calling you a crazy soccer player out there trying to approach you. Can you give us a little bit more detail?
Well, as I mentioned, everybody stopped answering me the phone, and I had one or two doctors that spoke with me, so to speak, and he said, "Look, your approach is really more aggressive than it should be, and if you continue like that, you're risking to shut down everyone. So stop doing it. Either find another way, or just give it a rest, and then come back after 2-3 months until everybody's relaxed." But I have to say again, my mistake was that I was so motivated to close a deal after quitting my career, and I was just wanted to go in a straight line and don't listen to anybody. And I knew that my team is good, and if we close the deal, we will add value. And again, I had to find another approach.
And so Nikolay, it was. I heard you use the word aggressive. So the outreach was aggressive. Mailing letters, I feel like, is actually not aggressive, but then the follow-up after that, you did pretty aggressive follow-up. So give us a picture as to what was so aggressive.
Yeah, so the aggressive is when they receive the letter and I get the feedback from the courier company that they received the letter. 2 days later, I'm on the phone. I'm calling.
Mm-hmm.
So normally they didn't respond. So on a normal day, they will have 3 or 4 missed calls from me. Then I understood that it's probably the best time to contact them is either after 6 p.m. or before 9 a.m. because they are still not in the storm, so to speak. So, but these are things I learned afterwards. But if you have someone calling you 3, 4, 5 times a day and sending you emails and this, they just got it the wrong way.
Yeah.
Sometimes I even went there physically, and can I speak with the owner? I sent him a letter. I mean, I'm not an aggressive guy. It's not in my nature, but just they took my approach that it was aggressive. So I never said something offensive to anyone. I tried to be as polite as possible, but it was something new.
Well, Nicholas characterized this as a business development effort, as basically a sales effort, because you're not doing it in the tens of thousands. It's pretty targeted. 150 is actually pretty targeted. And it was kind of like, you were doing something that many rookie salespeople in any context, a mistake that they make, which is too heavy, too aggressive to start. And then you had to learn the dance and the persistent but soft. So really, you were just learning how to be a salesman, and it's a good reminder that this whole process is often the independent sponsor building deal flow process is in fact often a sales process.
Exactly.
You're selling the opportunity to them.
Yeah, and especially if it's something new, as it is here. I mean, you really have to be a good salesman, or to have someone in your team that is a good salesman that you can push through.
But so that's a great point right there, and one of the many reasons we're excited to have you here is it's super interesting for us to learn what the world looks like for independent sponsors internationally, and especially I think in an early stage market like Eastern Europe, where if you go to Canada or the UK, there is definitely a lot of deal activity even on the independent sponsor level. I think in your market, you said you're the very first one. But do you think that's a harder sale or easier sale? I mean, you are the golden goose coming along wanting to buy someone's business. They have no other transition opportunity, perhaps. So is that an advantage or disadvantage that you're in such a new market?
Well, already because we have closed some deals, I think it started to become more as an asset, because more and more people started to contact us and exploring the opportunity. Not everyone is ready to take it, and not everyone is sellable. Everyone's company is not sellable, but at least people started to contact us more. But really, I knew internally in myself that the moment we close the first deal, the floodgates will open, so to speak. And that's exactly what happened. Normally, in the beginning, our plan with my team was to close 1 or 2 deals, build them up, integrate them, manage them, learn more about that business, then close 1 or 2 more. But the moment we close our first deal and we get into the market, so to speak, we validate the idea. Basically, every second seller that I got in contact with, he wants to sell. So our deal flow is pretty intense. And that's when we figured out that we wanted to raise additional finance. And we also, we didn't want to be focused in any particular sector, because that will limit us again to that 150 number of potential targets.
So a lot of the skepticism that you encountered when you first attempted this was the aggressiveness we already talked about, but also was their skepticism that you could actually do this or would do this. And the moment you had a deal or 2 under your belt, you're getting all this deal flow. So in fact, owners are open to selling. They're willing to sell and have that conversation. It was more that they needed to believe that you, Nikolay, was the guy who could make it happen. And once you demonstrated that you're a guy who can make it happen, the conversations come.
Exactly. And also, now after closing some deals, I'm already the founder and the CEO of a legitimate company that already bought and made some acquisitions. Before that, I was just a football player that wanted to validate the idea with a good team behind him.
Yeah.
So I totally get it.
So educating sellers was one of the challenges you had early on. Which other challenges have you had as an independent sponsor in an early stage market?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to mention something about Romania, Romania's veterinary market, and sorry that I'm coming backwards, but after all that hurdles that we have to jump through and all these problems, and they're banning us from veterinary groups, etc. Actually, we made a positive impact on the market, because a lot of the sellers saw what we're gonna look for in the due diligence and what a potential investor and potential buyer will want to see in the financials. So I know that they started to prepare themselves for a sale. And also something funny, most of them, when I went to meet them, they were in a normal clothes, normal doctor clothes, right? And their pictures in LinkedIn were the same. But now if you open LinkedIn, all of them are with ties and suits and says CEO of whatever vet and general manager of whatever vet. So I feel that was a positive impact. And already 3 clinics in Romania that we were in negotiations, they already sold to a Polish company. So that's for the veterinary market in Romania. Just wanted to say it's an interesting side note. But about what are the challenges in a new market, in a virgin market, so to speak. So obviously the first 1 or 2 meetings, they are educational for me and for the sellers. Also, I'm educating myself how the seller reacts to vendor financing, and he's not going to receive all the payments up front and all these things. I also want to explore how they will react and how open they are, how motivated they are to sell. And also I'm explaining the process that they're going to go through, and that it's nothing bad will happen and nobody will steal their business, and we will not make revolution in their business. The good thing, I think, Nicholas, you will agree that buying from such operators is that they really care what will happen post-acquisition. So me and my team, we try to use that in a good way and show them that we really mean well and we don't want to do revolution and change everything what they've built. And also another challenge is financing. So I would love to have the SBA financing.
Yes.
That's what yes, in America. Yes. I mean, we have nothing like that here. So you either have to have a bigger deal that a bank wants to finance, or you have to use some equity and the rest should be a seller finance or some creative sort of financing.
And so, what can you maybe share the structure of a deal or two of yours?
Oh yeah. So the first deal that we closed was in a printing manufacturing business. We negotiated. It was 4 times free cash flow. The purchase price, we paid 25% upfront. That was equity from an investor, and the rest was seller finance for 6 years, I think. Was.
Wow, 75% seller financing. So that's a lot of seller financing.
Yeah, but it gets even better because our second deal we closed with 100% debt because the purchase price was, again, I think was 4 and something, again in the same sector, 4 times EBITDA, and the seller wanted just 15% upfront or something like that. So because we had already one acquisition in that sector, the bank gave us all the money, and the rest, again, they are seller finance for the next 7 years, I think, or something like this.
It's almost like the costs, so to speak, of the immaturity of the market trickle down to the seller here. That if they want to sell, they need to accept a lower valuation because there's less demand for what they're doing, and a worse structure because there aren't better options available for you as a buyer. Is that correct?
Well, you could say that, but to be honest, the sellers got higher prices, actually. Normally, these businesses, we would like to buy them between 2 and 3.5 times free cash flow. But we gave them higher valuation if they gave us the terms that we are looking for. And also, they have seller finance for 7 years, but they have a balloon on the 4th year. So they will take their money earlier, but we just want the cash flow to cover the debt service to them.
But Nikolay, to Nicholas's point, one of the dynamics in your market is that, yes, you have to educate all these sellers. And so there's a lot of friction there, but there's very little competition. There are very, very few people doing in Bulgaria what you're doing. And so that would seem to be a huge advantage. And in fact, probably when you net it all out, that's probably a bigger advantage than all these other disadvantages are negative. So maybe just, am I right in my instinct there? Say more about the supply-demand dynamics of the fact that you're the only buyer that most of these sellers are ever going to talk to. That must give you some leverage. It's not leverage, literal leverage, but actual literal leverage and, negotiating leverage.
You're spot on, Will. Yes. So really the biggest advantage that we have here, and why I'm so excited about the market and what we are doing, is basically we don't have any competition. As I mentioned to you, 100% of the sellers that I've contacted until now, at least, nobody ever approached them with such an idea and such proposition. So that gives us a huge leverage in a good way when we are negotiating the terms and we're structuring the deals. And but what I can say from experience is we always try to give fair market valuation to the sellers, because we need them post acquisition. We need them with us. We need them on board. And if some lawyer or some of their relatives say to them, "Look, you actually sold for less what you could have sold," they won't be happy with us. So they will find a way to get it back. So we are much more demanding, if I can say it like that, on the terms that we get. We try to give fair market valuation, but if we can get the terms, as I explained a minute before, that works perfectly for us. So we have a happy seller because he got the higher valuation, and we can also make the returns that we're looking for our investors.
So you have no competition as it stands, but there are no barriers to entry. So this is not a sustainable monopoly that you've built, right? You have a first mover advantage. How does this, and there will be other players, it's a question of time, how does this affect your strategy as you sit here today?
To be honest, I thought about that, and I spoke with my team a lot about this, but I don't think that can happen so easy, because I know the hurdles that someone new has to go through. You have to know to speak the language of that people. You have to learn how to earn their trust, and that's not an easy thing. It doesn't help you if you're a finance professional. It doesn't help you if you're a really good lawyer. You really have to be on the streets talking to them and learning from experience what works and what doesn't. And that is also a big asset for us, because we are doing that already for 4 years. And I know when to say what, when not to say what. And also I know when there is a potential deal, really, a really motivated seller that we can work with, or there is somebody's just kicking the tires and wants to see what price we will give to him.
It would stress me out a lot to be in your position, actually, because I would. You have this incredible first mover advantage, and yes, you might sustain it or always have be a step ahead. But don't you also feel now is your time to act, strike while the iron is hot?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, there's always, and because the market is so broad here, and there is so many deals around. Probably at some point, some other group will come and start to approach the sellers. But right now, we are really in a rolling mode, and we would like to move as quick as possible, because also we ourselves, we didn't expect to have so many opportunities and people to be so open.
And so how much deal flow do you get these days?
Well, per week, as I mentioned, 6-7 deals per week are coming through my desk. Not all of them are buyable, but if I can speak with 6-7 sellers a week, one of them looks like a potential good target that we have to explore more.
And so the game for you right now, you're in buying modus, in the sense that, yes, you have a portfolio already, you're developing that, but right now it's a land grab in Bulgaria, and you need capital and resources and staff in order to execute on what you're saying translates into, sounds like you're saying, one legitimate acquisition opportunity per week based on that 6 to 7 business owners approaching you.
Yeah. So per week we have one acquisition that actually is worth getting into in more details. But really, I like the term you used, land grabbing. We really are in a buying mode, and we try to be we are sector agnostic, because we don't want to focus in any specific area to limit ourselves. We want to have as much deal flow as possible. And as you mentioned, we need more capital. We need also more people. And we are trying to do that constantly, especially me. I try to connect and open my network more and more, because I know that one of the sides is to buy a good business, but then also what happens afterwards really depends on who you have on board with you.
And so on the capital side specifically, to date, I believe your approach has been to syndicate, like any independent sponsor, syndicate the equity from people in your network, high net worth individuals, once you have a deal under LOI. But given that it's a land grab, could you benefit from having a large institutional player or a family office that is essentially becoming your general partner, and that would enable you to scale and go faster?
I can see the value in that right now. Yes. Normally, as I mentioned in the beginning, we wanted to go step by step. And I thought that the strategy that we have on a deal by deal basis, the moment we have an SPA signed with the seller, we will go back to our investors and raise the equity that we need. But when you have so many deal flow, I think it's going to be much more helpful to have, as you mentioned, a family office or a high net worth individual who actually we do have the capital with us, because also we need a working capital as well, because we need to hire people.
Yeah, you mean at the Unity level, you need working capital to pay staff and expand your team and pay deal expenses and so forth. What's your view on return profiles in Bulgaria in a nascent market like yours versus what you can see in the US when you read reports in the US on the IRRs that exist in this market? How does it compare in Bulgaria? Are you higher or lower than what has become standard over here, which is probably, let's call it somewhere in the 20s, maybe even high 20s?
Well, I would like to think that here is higher because of the variety of deals that we can get. But we decided with my team to underwrite the deals and the minimum hurdle to be 25% IRR. So that's our minimum. Until now, I think the deals that we've closed are going to be much higher. But we will see that when it's time to to exit.
And I think Minds Capital review a lot of deals every week from an LP perspective. And I think most base cases that we see are in the mid-high 20s or even into the 30s. This is quite commonplace in the independent sponsor world. And so you are saying there is an opportunity that it could be even higher than that in a place like Bulgaria, because you have that distinct first mover advantage right now.
For sure, for someone to commit capital to us in Bulgaria, he really has to take something more than what he can get in the US, for example, or in the UK. So we try to be as conservative as possible, because I don't like to go to some investor and tell him you're going to get a 50% IRR or whatever, although he might take it. But I'd like to be conservative and start with our hurdle rate, which is 25. And then if we manage to get him more, that's even better.
Nikolay, why don't you give us quickly just what's in the portfolio now and what your intentions are with each of those platforms?
So, okay, I already mentioned that we closed 2 deals in the same sector, which is printing manufacturing. This is manufacturing of marketing materials, everything from business cards to billboards. They are doing everything. We have 1 dental clinic closed as well, and now we are closing on a kindergarten deal, preschool services. For all of these sectors, there's big demand here in the sectors. And our intention is to build the 3 sectors, to build more add-on acquisitions for all of them, and we have pending deals for all of them as well.
And so to do a consolidation play, obviously, with the idea that you'd hold indefinitely, or are you looking to exit these businesses in 7 or 8 years? Obviously, if the consolidation is successful, then you have the option of doing whatever. You have a lot of options. But what do you think? What do you kind of expect to do?
Well, normally when we talk to investors, when we persuade investors, we give them a put option on the 5th year. So obviously, no one wants his capital to be locked for a long period of time, longer than 5 years. So our intention is to keep the businesses for indefinitely, but for sure there's going to be some liquidity event, either through a dividend recap or we will just buy back the shares or we make a partial exit, by the way. But we don't intend to exit 100% of the group, so to speak. But it is a business, and I don't want to say never. So that's why I say to investors, if we have a good offer for someone to buy a particular sector that is consolidated from us, obviously we will entertain the idea.
And on the equity side there, so you mentioned earlier in the conversation that debt financing is quite challenging to obtain because the market is immature. How about on the equity side? I mean, wouldn't this be very attractive? You underwrite business cases of stable, established, profitable businesses with a roll-up plan and a proven model, and you're suggesting 25% plus IRR. How easy or hard is it to find equity investors when you're in an immature market?
Well, here the game is the same as selling the idea to veterinary doctors. There are PE firms here, private equity firms, that they do have a really high ticket to enter into them. So our ticket is not high, and the people that we are approaching with that ticket size, most of them like to invest on the safe side in real estate. Basically, 99% of the investors in Bulgaria, they are real estate investors. Although I don't take that so much as an investment, but they try to protect their capital, so to speak. And here the process is the same. My role is to show them that they really can take higher return than what they're gaining on the stock market and in real estate. And the only minus, if I can say it like that, is they have to lock the capital for 3 to 5 years. But they have frequent reports from us. They can talk to me all the time. So it is also an educational process, because again, it's not very popular for the people that we are after as investors.
Do you think at some point there will be an overlap in reaching out to business owners and having retail investors? If they could be, when you reach out to a successful veterinarian, they could also be a retail investor of Unity, right?
Yeah. Actually, dental doctors they're really a good part of the population that they do have liquidity and they don't know what to do with it. Most of them have 3 to 5 houses already bought, so they don't need more real estate. So they're a good group of people that we are getting in contact with. But again, the process is it takes a bit longer because I have to explain more. And I don't know, is that the case? But I would imagine in America there is much more risk capital available than here. But that's what makes it interesting as well.
We've had some of that dynamics actually at the Minds Capital, a little surprisingly, Will, but we reach out to a lot of independent sponsors and connect with them because we invest in their deals. But interestingly, many of them have not only come to us because they have interesting deals for us to look at, but because they see themselves as prospective LPs in the future. So that kind of synergistic business development outreach, I would imagine that you could benefit from too. Since you're a first mover and you're looking for both business owners and retail investors at the same time.
Yeah, you have to keep in mind also that some of the sellers, they are rolling up their equity into the deal as well. So they are already kind of invested in the deals that we have.
Nikolay, I wanted to have you do a little bit of a more deep dive on that. So for listeners who are in markets, less mature markets, what do you find works in terms of offering to the sellers? You've already talked about in terms of the actual enterprise value and terms and multiples. But I mean, what will their role be? Do they stay in the business? They roll equity, you said, so it's not just seller financing, it's rolling equity. What have you found works with what they want?
So yeah, I will speak from my experience here. So normally they want to receive at least 50% in cash, at least 50%. And obviously we strive that to be as less as possible, less than 50%. But normally in a normal case, if you offer at least 51% in cash and the rest structured as a combination of rollover equity and some portion of seller finance, or maybe a preferred stock, people are open to listen, especially if they take higher valuation for that. As to their role in the business, because we are sector agnostic, we don't have specific. We don't have specific expertise in the sectors that we are investing. We really count on the sellers to stay on board. Obviously, they are rolling over some equity, so they have to be motivated, and also for them to continue running the business as they are right now, as they are until that point. Except that we also are requiring much more reporting. Obviously, our finance team is helping them structuring the reporting and helping them with that. But from an operational point of view, and also contacting the clients, because we also don't want to make revolution in the clients' minds as well. We try to do as less damage as possible, so to speak. And also, if we make a new company, we make a new SPV, we make it with the same name, just some maybe year that is going to be different from the last company. So also the clients, they don't recognize that there is a deal that happened.
And so, Nikolay, your need in general that the owners stay with the business to make for the deal structure, but also operationally, perhaps most importantly, operationally. Does that mean that your ideal target seller is not a retiring owner, but is in fact somebody who's a little bit younger, maybe?
No. Almost all of the people that we've talked to, they want to retire, but they're willing to stay as part of the transitioning process. So we explain to them that we expect them to stay at least for 3 years, although we are aware that 3 years is probably too much. But we want to lock them, so to speak, for 3 years. And if we manage to find a general manager or we close more acquisitions in that space, then we find a manager for all of the acquisitions and we're not going to need the sellers anymore, so we can release them. But they also, if they have a seller finance portion, they feel more comfortable being involved in the business. So they somehow have some guarantee that the business will earn the money that they have to receive. And also another very important subject that I have to say is we are really intense on filtering the sellers and the seller's character. So in the area that we are at and the space that we are at, small and micro cap businesses, you really need a seller that is gonna buy into the vision that you have post acquisition. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how good the deal is financially, it just won't work. It's not gonna work.
So how do you filter them?
Well, obviously, the team counts a lot on me and our CFO when we go and talk to them, and it's a bit of it's a subjective question, so to speak, because they count on me. And if I say that the guy has a good character or we can work with him, then we're probably gonna go with him. But we also have a list. We have a checklist of things that I have to ask him these questions. I mean, is somebody from his family involved, and he have any legal issues in the past, etc. And then we check all these things. But again, if we don't feel comfortable with the character of the person and we see that he just wants to take the money and he doesn't care, we are going to pass the deal. And we had a lot of examples like that we pass.
Nikolay, one other thing, this won't be applicable to so many people, but it's such an interesting dynamic you touched on. The fact that in formerly Soviet countries, that this is literally the first generation of entrepreneurs and business owners that you're dealing with. So there's no business older than 34 or 35 years. They don't exist. Fascinating.
Yep.
And I actually, there's another searcher I know who was Polish, but she was abroad in the States and Australia, now wants to go back to her native Poland to do a search, said the very same dynamic. So for this audience, the former and former Soviet markets, is there something there about that particular feature that changes the psychology? Maybe that they're just less sophisticated because there's never been, I don't know what it might be.
Yeah, exactly. That's the case. I mean, most of the people that we are buying from, as you mentioned, they're first generation entrepreneurs, and they associate entrepreneurship with working there, being in the business for 12, 15 hours, and you are the owner and actually you are the manager. So what we are implementing here with the independent sponsor model is actually we are separating these two, and we are the investor, we are the owner, and we want to act as the owner of the capital. And we try to find operators that will operate the business as we see fit and based on the business plans that we prepare for them. So this is a big switch for the sellers in their heads, because they perceive if you're gonna be the owner, you have to know the most from everyone for the business. You have to know how the machine works and the clients. So this is a big switch for them, and I understand them. But most of them started to pick up that thought that if they want for their business to be sellable, they have to be willing to stay for the transition, and also the new owner should not be the best printing guy in the business, or should not know how to do the endodontic, so to speak. So, but really that dynamic. And when you say Poland, I mean Poland is really an economic engine now for Europe. And if that lady goes there and wants to do the search fund model, I mean, I'm sure that she's going to kill it, because there is a lot of opportunities now.
One other thing I wanted to ask about the psychology of sellers, unrelated to former Soviet countries. You mentioned the fair market value and how you want to give fair market value, and so the way you often end up in a situation, their price, your terms, that kind of cliche. But since there is nobody doing what you're doing, what is the fair market value? Because the fair market value is not the multiples seen in the US. So it would seem, so how do you arrive at a fair market value? They can either kind of take 2.5x or never sell. I mean, if you really wanted to be aggressive, but that is a logical thing to present to them.
Yeah. By the way, I'm thinking like you, but I never said that to a seller. I mean, you either sell to us on 3 times or you just stay with the business. But that's actually the truth. And I try really to be polite in explaining what opportunity actually we're putting in front of them. But on your question about the valuation, so we try to present them with some comparables and some examples that we've seen in the past. And especially if we had a deal in that sector, it's very easy.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we had a case that a lady wanted to sell her printing company, and she had a son that he's an investment banker in New York. So he said that for a company of her size, normal multiple will be from 7 to 9 times. So I said to her, look, your son really has to change his calculator, because in Bulgaria, this is very different. You either take from 3 to 4 or there is no deal. So eventually she actually, and she had an advisor as well, because her son helped her to find an M&A advisor. And on the question also where the seller will know what's fair market, I mean, the moment in the deal, the lawyers and the accountants from the other side get involved in the deal, then they start to educate the seller that, and sometimes the problem arises from there, because they say, hey, he's offering you 3 times, but look, this business in UK he sold for 6 times, so ask 5 for it. So that sometimes is a problem, but we don't get involved so much in that kind of conversation, because obviously there are no tenders here for businesses. They either agree with what we can offer, or we just go to the next one.
Yeah.
But sometimes there is an issue.
Well, to Nicholas's point, the land grab point, as you become more and more established and more businesses, sellers hear about you, you will be able to set the price, because you'll have more and more of your own comps to point to, and you'll have more and more of an ability to say to sellers, look, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I have another 10 deals I could look at. I really don't need to transact with you. That desperation to do a deal that you had a few years ago is long gone.
Yes. I can say for sure. But on your question, actually on your point, Will, that this is all the time the dynamic that we're going through in a deal negotiation. So we know that there is no other buyer for that business. We know that their advisor that is advising them to ask for 5 times, he won't buy the business for 5 times, and also he will never find another buyer for 5 times. So we try to be as polite as possible and explain that that is not going to happen. But it's a very common thing to see in a negotiation, where the seller has higher expectation, or he has advisors that are advising him not in his favor, because he's not going to sell the business that way.
Well, it's an incredibly common dynamic in any market, not just a market like Bulgaria. And Acquiring Minds, talking to buyers of businesses in the US, inflated sense of value in the business is just a very, very common dynamic and something that needs to be navigated by business buyers. And I'm sympathetic. We're all sympathetic to sellers. This is the culmination of their career. It's probably their only exit they'll ever experience. They have very high hopes about what they might be able to earn from this event. And so I'm sympathetic that they are going to be careful and they have so much blood, sweat, and tears in their business. It's natural that they would see it as more, frankly, having more monetary value than it actually might. And so there's often an adjustment to their expectations that needs to happen. You'll hear often about a seller who says no to a business buyer, and then a year later comes back around. They've had time to digest the reality of the enterprise value of their business and kind of lower their expectations. But it was a process. It took months, and then they later come back.
Yeah, that's why we never close the door for a seller. I mean, if he's an okay as a seller, we never close the door. But that also is connected with something else, Will, that people also need time to understand that we are something as a financial company, and we need to produce returns for our investors.
Yeah.
So when you invest money, return on investment is really important for us. But people here, they associate the value of their companies based on how much sweat they put in, how long they work in the company, and etc., etc. So these things are important, but that's what is invested into the business. We are also interested in what that investment actually will produce for us, and that's why we have a different point of view from the sellers.
Okay, Nikolay. Well, is there anything that we didn't ask you that you really wanted to share with the audience?
Well, no, I cannot remember of anything.
Okay.
I think you even asked me more than I expected.
Okay, good. Well, if listeners want to reach out to you, Nikolay, I can imagine people in your part of the world or in markets like Bulgaria really wanting to bend your ear. Is there a way you prefer that they reach out?
Yeah, email, phone. My phone is on the website, so anyone can reach me. LinkedIn,
Okay,
is my favorite.
Okay, great. We'll include all of that in the show notes. Nikolay Dimitrov, what a fascinating story. Congratulations on successfully pivoting from a successful football career into a successful business buying career. It's quite a journey.
Yes, and thank you guys. And also I want to thank you for what you're doing, because it also helps people like me. I watch the shows whenever I can. I watch different kind of people, and it's really, really nice to see that problems in Bulgaria in that sector are almost the same as the problems in the US. So it calms me down.
Great. Thanks, Nikolay.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed that interview. For more like it, subscribe to Meeting Other Minds wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. And check out Minds Capital, where Nicholas and I are partners alongside Max Lummis. Minds Capital invests equity in independent sponsored deals. So if you're a sponsor with a deal under LOI, please visit mindscapital.co to start a conversation. There's also an investor tab on our website with information about partnership opportunities and future fundraises. See you in the next episode.